Hiya, this is Dan at the Lions Tower. I'm doing a quick chainmail tutorial for you guys today due to popular request. Now, this is something that over time I've practiced with various different methods and never really been happy with any of them, ranging from micro mesh, nanomesh, just insert brushes, through to things like surface noise and UV unwraps and whatnot. There's always an issue with any of these where the meshes come to join up and you either spend an awful lot of time like fiddling with them to try and correct them, or having to like sculpt extra detail into them, and they never look as good as you hope they're going to do. Alphas are always too realistic, so the mesh ends up being too thin and you end up having to put supports on all of them because you have to exaggerate them to make them printable and so on. So we came up with this alternative solution with the help of Bill Thornhill, so thank you Bill for this. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a custom insert brush, and we're going to place the rings one at a time. Now this is going to sound really arduous, but because of the size of the mesh that we're trying to achieve, we're basically looking to make this look right at a distance of about 3 foot, 2 to 3 foot on the tabletop. It's going to paint nicely and it's going to look like chainmail from a very reasonably near distance. What we're not looking to do is to achieve absolutely realistic chainmail, because that is not going to work for a miniature. This has got to be something that is representative of chainmail rather than being like a true chainmail. And you'll see if you try and paint one of these models, and I'll try and put some painted examples up into this tutorial at the end. But yeah, you'll see it's got the effect of chainmail, which is what I'm after. I'm more interested in how it paints and how it looks on the tabletop than how it looks in a render. So we're going to start with this insert mesh brush. You can see it up in the top left corner. It is basically a cylinder that's chamfered off at a kind of an angle on the end, and it's got a rebate in the middle of it, so it's got a little small indent in it. Now it is far too high poly for what it needs to be, but it does the job for me. Realistically, I should reduce the poly count significantly to make it a little bit more lightweight, but like I say, it does the job. So it's, I've never had to kind of go back and redress it yet. So let's get looking at it now. I'm going to extrude one of these cylinders onto his arm just so you can see the shape that we're actually dealing with. Okay, so we're now going to extrude this cylinder out onto the arm. This is just a demonstration of what the cylinder actually looks like. So I'm just going to go and isolate this mesh for you in just a second. You can see the chamfered end that I was talking about with the rebate in the middle. There we go. Nicely isolated. You can see all of the heavyweight mesh I was talking about. All of those faces could probably be removed. We could take out about a dozen rings out of that and we'd be fine still. That's a future improvement. Okay, so now we're just going to go up to the brush menu. We're going to set the depth. I'm going to pull it right down, so all I want is the ring part to just be protruding just above the surface of the model. So I'm going to set the mesh size small and then extrude it out. And when I do this, I'm just drawing straight down, and that's going to make sure that the bottom part of the ring protrudes more than the top part. And that's because of the tool that we're using, not because of any properties of the brush or anything else. So if you drew it sideways, then it's going to change the orientation of it. If you go up, it's going to be put the deeper part at the top. So we've got these like little ball studs on the bracer, and I want all the rings to be roughly about the same size as them. So we've set it to a reasonable size, and the size doesn't really matter, it's relative to the model. Okay, so what I'm just going to do now, I'm going to isolate the arms, the torso and the legs from everything else, just the polygroups. I'm going to split them off. We're going to put them into their own like separate subtool, and then we're going to duplicate that. And now I often do this as a means of kind of creating a kind of a form rather than doing extractions, because I don't need to add any thickness to it. So I'm just going to duplicate that, and then we're going to merge the one version of it back into the base mesh, so the base mesh is complete again. And then the one that's left, that's going to be our kind of our chainmail mesh, if you like. So we can merge all of that together if you want, or you can just leave it separate. It can ultimately be deleted at the end, so it's just as a form. Now, if I'd have thought about this a little bit more at the time, what I should have done was smoothed out the topology, so the muscle structure and stuff wasn't so kind of angular with like changing faces. It just makes it a little bit easier to draw this on if you've got smooth faces. So you will see me having to adjust a few times with the move brush, but you can see I'm just drawing the ring, holding control and shift to constrain the rings to the size of the brush, so that I don't have to worry about measuring it every single time. And they don't even need to be neat rows on this one, we just want to just put them all in. So I do tend to do a row at a time. Sometimes I do a little cluster, sometimes I go up and down. It doesn't really make any odds, you just have to fill the space. And we do want like overlaps, a bit like the Olympic rings. So as you draw the rings out, remember that as you draw downwards, the bottom of the ring, the direction you're drawing in, as I say, drawing downwards here, the bottom side of the ring is going to end up as the more protruding part. So the less protruding part with the top is going to naturally fall behind them. We're going to end up with a nice kind of set of layers. Now the problem is with this and any other chainmail method, if you've got any that are facing down, or when you do the orientation of the model for supporting, you've got any facing down, you're going to have to do a lot of supports. There's a lot of islands are going to crop up on this. So do be prepared to throw an absolute ton of light supports into the chainmail. So use it sparingly. It's often better to kind of have the hint of chainmail, just like I've got here where it's going behind the mantle, rather than completely coating massive areas, unless you absolutely need to. Now if you're doing Dark Age nights and you know, that kind of historical troupe, they obviously didn't actually wear an awful lot of plate mail. For the most part they will be wearing like chainmail. Or for Rosie, I'm just going to go back and refer to this as just mail, because I've been told off about this too many times and he's going to be sitting there kicking me otherwise. So apologies Rosie for repeatedly using the term chainmail, but everybody else knows what I'm talking about. So right, so we're just going to layer this up, we're going to block it out. You'll see we've got a different coloured polygroup appear there. I think the polygroup colouring is to do with the normals. Once in a while you get a different colour, more often than not they come out the same, and they are the same group if you try and isolate them. So yeah, you just want to fill in all of the blanks basically. You don't need to worry about areas that you can't see, because it's just extra poly weight into the model which is unnecessary. So put it in the areas you can see. And you can see some of these are going a little bit weird now because of the facing. This is where I was saying, if I'd have thought better of it at the beginning, what I should have done was used a bit of H polish and smoothed out the muscle structure to ease the transitions from one plane to the next, so it'd be a smoother surface to sculpt all of this onto. And like I say, you think this is going to be, you know, hand placing every single ring is going to be an arduous task, and it is a little bit of a, you know, a bit of a pain, but you've got complete, absolute control over the placement of every ring, and when you're using the size constraints and the, you know, the depth and everything else, it really doesn't take that long to kind of get an area covered. Now having said it doesn't take a lot of time, what I am going to do is I'm just going to pop this into time-lapse mode, speed it up a little bit, because there's an awful lot of rings being placed, and I don't want you sitting watching for 20 more minutes of of this and being bored of it. So let's get some speeding up going on, put a little bit of music over it, and we'll come back to you in a minute. Right, so now that the vest is done, the next thing to do is I'm going to insert this cube, and we're going to use this as a kind of a loincloth former, just so we can kind of make a skirt out of the chain as well. And I'm just going to demonstrate how I'll do this without using the body mesh essentially. So if you want to do like a cape or skirt or loincloth or whatever, this is the way I would approach it. So drop the cube in. I've duplicated the cube for the front and the back. There wasn't any real reason to do that, to be fair. You could just use one cube and drag it all the way through. For this one, I just thought it gave me a little bit more maneuverability. You don't need to worry too much about the base mesh showing through, like his bum cheeks are obviously sticking through the top there. That's perfectly fine because it's just the chain. The chain links will sit on top of that, and then they'll be kind of extruded into the mesh. You're not going to see the bum cheeks, you're not going to see the loincloth. It's all going to be masked in chain links. So I'm just creating a little bit of a shape at the moment, and again, you don't even need to really get a proper shape going on here, because the rings will, as you'll see in a minute, the rings will kind of finish wherever you want them to finish. And then once we remove the former, the kind of the mesh that we're using here, all you'll be left with is the rings, and the mesh that we're using now, that what we're creating now, is no longer in existence. It's not part of the final model. Okay, so we're going back to the ring tool, again, all the same size settings, drawing them out using the constrain tools exactly as I did before, and I'm going to run it all the way around so it's like a skirt rather than just a loincloth. Put a few rings around the side, not too many. Now this is going to be more of the same, so I think I'm going to pop this into time-lapse for you again, and then we'll come back when we get to the end. I'll just talk over some of the detail aspects. Before I do time-lapse, one of the things you will see is I'm going to leave a few holes in there to make it look a little bit more dog-eared and tatty. So if you see me missing areas and whatever, it's intentional, it's not a mistake. So we'll be back to you shortly. Let's get this back into time-lapse. Okay, so there we are. We've filled in all of the area now with chainmail links. Next thing to do is to isolate the mesh and delete that, the base mesh at least. You're going to see some little gaps in there which should normally be resin traps, but we're not going to leave them as resin traps. I'm either going to fill the holes or we're going to remove some rings. In this case, I think we're going to go and delete a few rings, which will give it the appearance of being a bit tatty and dog-eared. And especially when you're dealing with undead, it's always nice to, break it up and make it look a little bit less regular. Of course, if you're not doing undead, you're doing elves or dwarfs or humans and whatnot, then you're probably going to want to make sure that your mesh is a little bit more regular, that the rings line up, that they're not missing great big gaps unless there's a particular stylistic reason you want that look. But yeah, for undead and anything that's risen and been buried and whatnot, it's a good look to have a few things missing. Now I'm just using the move tool here to just adjust the flow of the chainmail a little bit. What I should have done was sculpt the kind of the flow into the kind of the under mesh, and then the rings would just conform to it without any deformation. I didn't do it at the time, and it looks a little bit too flat and too uniform and regular. So yeah, let's put some move brush in there just to kind of give it a little bit of shape, a little bit of movement. Just pushing them back into the model a little bit as well, so we don't want too much of the ring extending. And then where we've got things like belts and things like that that existed previous to the chainmail, one of the things you'll have to do is just go back to the belts at some point and just adjust them a little bit. You even need to push the rings so that they sit below the belt, or grab the belt and just move it so it is further afield and, you know, more protruding. Whenever you do this, the best way of doing it for me, I always find, is to just go to the move brush, click onto the model, and you hold the Alt key, and then when you drag and move, it constrains it to just an in and out movement. Basically uses the normals to determine which direction the mesh can be moved. And there you have your finished chainmail skirt. Now I'm just going to auto group it so all of the rings are their own individual thing, because my next plan is we're going to delete a few rings to give it that kind of age damaged effect. Once we've done this, we're also going to Dynamesh with groups on. What that's going to do is that's going to give us more topology to work with, and I'm going to add some battle damage into it. It's probably unnecessary on a 32mm scale miniature, but if you want to go for larger models, you might want to do a little bit of this. You can break the edges of some of the rings using the orb cracks brush, or your damn standard, or even just clay build up and just just use it inverted. But by doing that, you can kind of create some like areas where it's clearly been attacked and there's some blade scratches and whatnot in there, which is, you know, what I'm going to do in a minute. So we've removed the rings. You can see there's some light showing through. We've got gaps that go all the way through. So I'm pretty happy with that now. So we've Dynamesh the whole skirt. So it's still individual components at this point, so all of the rings are still separate. So you can still edit them, and that's because we've got the groups on. So I'm using damn standard, sorry, not damn standard, I use orb cracks, and we're just carving a few cuts in there. Now, as I say, it's pretty futile on a 32mm scale miniature. It'll add to a little bit in the render, but it's not really going to do an awful lot on the finished piece, and I do tend to avoid this kind of work where it's unnecessary and doesn't pay off. It's just a waste of time. But I did this at the time because I was literally thinking about the larger scale models, and if you wanted to kind of up level the detail. And bear in mind again, if you're doing an upscaled model, you're doing something 75mm or 50mm, you probably want to use smaller rings again. So you know, always test print it and just find out. So there he is anyway. There's our little goblin all finished up, and he is ready to be painted. So I'm just going to put up a few demonstration models so we can show some examples of painted chainmail, and yeah, give it a go yourself, see how you get on, and share your work with us. Let's see what you've come up with. Okay guys, so thank you very much, thanks for tuning in, hope this has been informative for you. You can grab the link for the tool in the description, so if you just want to go and pick that up for yourself, then feel free. And other than that, thank you all again, and be sure to let me know in the comments if there's any other tutorials you'd like to see. Catch you later, tailors.